In a time of darkness and greed, it is your light that we need. You came to teach us how to live. Muhammad, Ya Rasulullah, you were so caring and kind. Your soul was full of light. You are the best of mankind. Muhammad, khayru khalqillah. Sallu ala Rasulillah, Habib al-Mustafa. Peace be upon the messenger, the chosen one. From luxury you turned away, and all night you would pray, truthful in every word you say. Muhammad, Ya Rasulullah, your face was brighter than the sun, your beauty equal by none. You are Allah's chosen one.
That the word Tajir was actually started by Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. The word Tajir is instead of Simsar in the times of Jahiliyyah. Now I'll say I'm not an expert on this, and mashallah there are many mashayikh here, so I have to be very careful. So this shows that this kind of work is receiving a great deal of attention. It is being received by a number of people, old, young, men, women, from different parts of the world, different faiths, and so on, because they see the importance of this project. Now, what do we mean by, what National Geographic has actually done is also, they have produced recently a book for kids out of that 1,000 inventions, so that can be used in the schools and families and so on. Rather than go and follow the same pattern of women's lib and suffragettes and so on, fight your way into the society. You don't have to fight, my good sister, because all you need to do in a Muslim society is to say, I want my right, which was 1,000 years ago, and you'll feel many times better in taking that right, because it gives you what we call, in brackets, equality in society. Muslims now are a candidate for improving upon the world, because they're starting to build their nations. Now I want to look at that. And how can one say, why is it, how did this world in the past manage to live in an economic stability situation? What kind of development, what kind of institutions? And you find that it is actually the individual behavior, the individual person, the human resource, the quality, the unit quality of a human society is what counts. And I tell you one thing, it is linked also a little bit with Oman. You'd be happy to say. Oman? What has Oman to offer to the world? Stability of the economy of the world? How could the Omanis do that? Well, I'll tell you one thing. The behavior of the Omanis, your great-great-grandfathers before, they had a special characteristic in their trades, the way they used to conduct their business.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome and thank you for attending this lecture as portrayed there, Enrichment of Education for Secure and Safe Future by Professor Salim Al-Hasani. We thank him deeply for accepting our invitation to come and share with us his knowledge on Muslim heritage, not only on this subject, but three other subjects which he's going to give in the coming 4 days at the Grand Mosque, inshallah. May Allah reward him for his efforts in enlightening us and enlightening the world on the richness of Islamic contribution to the development of human civilization, particularly in the field of Muslim heritage. Before I continue, to give you a bit more on the profile of Professor Salim, we'll begin our program by a recitation from the glorious Quran by Sheikh Muhammad Al-Harasi.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ولقد أنزلنا إليكم آيات مبينات ومثلا من الذين خلوا من قبلكم وموعظة للمتقين. الله نور السماوات والأرض. مثل نوره كمشكاة فيها مصباح. المصباح في زجاجة. الزجاجة كأنها كوكب دري يوقد من شجرة مباركة زيتونة لا شرقية ولا غربية يكاد زيتها يضيء ولو لم تمسسه نار نور على نور يهدي الله لنوره من يشاء ويضرب الله الأمثال للناس والله بكل شيء عليم. في بيوت أذن الله أن ترفع ويذكر فيها اسمه يسبح له فيها بالغدو والآصال رجال لا تلهيهم تجارة ولا بيع عن ذكر الله وإقام الصلاة وإيتاء الزكاة يخافون يوما تتقلب فيه القلوب والأبصار ليجزيهم الله أحسن ما عملوا ويزيدهم من فضله والله يرزق من يشاء بغير حساب. صدق الله العظيم.
Ahsant, Sheikh Muhammad. Before I give the podium to Professor Salim, a word or two on his profile. Professor Salim is an authority on the studies of Muslim heritage, in particular development of modern civilization and the contribution of Muslims to the foundations of modern civilization. Professor Salim has given talks on this subject, more than 150 talks internationally on this talk. He has also published over 200 papers internationally or in international journals, and also authored and edited more than 300 publications on this subject. In the past couple of years, Professor Salim has been named as one of the 500 most influential Muslims in the field of science and technology. In short, Professor Salim, his achievement cannot be covered, or his spectrum cannot be covered in full. All we can say, he has earned a worldwide reputation in this field. He is going to talk approximately for about an hour, and after that we're going to have a few moments of question and answers, inshallah.
Assalamu alaikum. Bismillah. Alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salam ala Rasulillah. First, I must express my deep and heartfelt gratitude for the kind and generous invitation by the Diwan and Sultan Qaboos Higher Center for Culture and Science. And of course, I have to thank you for taking the trouble traveling such a long distance to come in here. Now, I know that this big hall takes probably about 4,000 people. 1,000? 5,000. And we have here a little more than 50. So each one of you is equivalent to 100. Right. Now, the verses on the Quran, of the Quran that you've just read, has inspired me to give me a good opening to what I want to say to you today. There was a reference to رِجَالٌ لَا تُلْهِيهِمْ تِجَارَةٌ, right? People of business, because this is business people with tijara. But I was told, maybe you can correct me, that the word tajir was actually started by Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. The word tajir is instead of simsar in the times of Jahiliyyah. Now, I'll say, I'm not an expert on this, and mashallah, there are many mashayikh here, so I have to be very careful, all right? This is not my field. But this ayah had brought this in my mind. And the word tajir, I am told, refers to is made out of 4 letters. Ta for taqwa, alif for amana, jim for jar'a or jasara, warra for rahma. Now, can you tell me, right, if businessmen and women of today in the world practice those 4 characteristics, will we have a catastrophe in the financial system in this world? Will we have injustice in this world? Will we have bad distribution of finance and money? Will we have misery in this world? We don't. So that's my opening. And I know I am supposed to be talking tonight with people who have been either students in the university or just graduated from the university. And hence, the one out of the 4 lectures during my visit was chosen about curriculum and how we can actually enrich the curriculum of our education so that we can produce a generation in the future to have a safe society and a secure society, perhaps a safe world and a secure world. So let's look at this chaotic world today. Now, this world here, if you look at it, I don't know whether you can read, but it's, we are facing a world that is very, very complex, with so many factors and so many problems in it that is really overwhelming. And one of them, of course, is the chaos that the economic system and the tujjar, I don't want to use the word tujjar because I think these 4 letters, they are very sacred. And we are actually starting very soon a very special project which is called 1001 Tajir, right? This is a group of business people around the world who believe in ethics, in moral business, in fearing Almighty, right? So that when they behave in business, they behave with conscience, they behave with trustworthiness, they behave with mercy so that they don't hoard and so on. So this is my start for you. Now, there is a very interesting complex that these chaotic situations in the global world, they are very much related to each other. And any educational system must bear in mind about what is really happening to humanity as a whole. You cannot live in an isolated place. What happens in China will affect what happens in Muscat. What happens in Nigeria will affect. The world is so interrelated and complex. Not only that the various factors in our life that govern the behavior of humanity and the world, they are all interlinked with each other. And these links, they make them feed each other, and some of them can resonate and they produce a huge impact without us realizing what the situation is. So I have in my lifetime, right, from 1940 until, say, recently, let's say in 2010, and then we project to 250. I have been told through statistics, reliable data, if you look at these three columns, one is on the population, then urban living in the cities, city life, and see the energy consumption, and you look at the ecosystem and the impact on the ecosystem and the world we are living in. The enormous increase in population is really incredible. And you look at the blue one is in 1940. The red one is just, about almost double in 1970. And then in 2010, look at where it's got to. And in 250 on this projection, it'd be way up above scale. If you can choose any line of the capacity of the earth, of our world, we as خلفاء وجعلناكم خلائف في الأرض. يعني أن الإنسان, the human being is considered, created as a vicegerent, as a khalifa, as a deputy of Allah to look after this planet. And it's only one planet, just one earth. And look at what we are doing to it. So when we prepare our generation in our education system, in our training, this is something new in this world. It didn't happen, 1,000 years ago. People were not aware about what was going on. But now we are aware of what's going on. We don't want to be starting to blame, people here and there and so on, who is causing it. This is a different story. The important thing is, how are we going to solve this problem? Every one of us needs to be involved, right? So look at the explosion of population. Look at the urban living, cities, they are exploding in terms of numbers. How are you going to get the infrastructure of cities and, and city life, get the water, get the energy and so on? These are all, they can be solved, but they need an effort. They need a collective effort, and they need a special mind of individuals, right? That can behave in a way, always think of one planet, and this is our home, right? And not just Oman, or not just Muscat, or not just my home, or just me, my university, or my house, or my family. There's a bigger dimension on this. And when, speaking about energy and speaking about what we are doing to the ecosystem, I'm giving this as an introduction because I was expecting some academics in here as well as you, right? So that we come to the point, well, where is our education going to be? How are we going to educate our children, right, and their children, and their, the children of their children, their grandchildren? What kind of world they will be facing, and therefore what kind of education and training they should be given so that they can respond to that world. Now, in 2050, it's just going to be really very, very difficult. Now, I'm just giving you a very simple example. If everyone in the world lived like an average Cuban from Cuba, right, we might just about the world as we know it today will sustain us. We'd be okay. But if we all live like Australians, we will need more than 3.5 planets like we have today. I'm not going to say if we live like Texans or people in California or in New York. It's just going to be, you need so many planets. It's not going to work. That this is going to cause big problems of wars, of greed. And this is where the Tajir, the feeling of God-fearing, God-conscious. the trustworthiness, the mercy, and so on. This all comes in as part of it. We need a new generation that knows how to handle and be responsible. Give you an example. In many situations, in the early teachings of Islam, because we're talking about heritage, you find that the behavior of the Prophet ﷺ was very responsible. And he considers one planet living. Like, I'll give you an example. It says if you go to a river, right, and you just take what you need from water, you don't waste the water, right? And the concept of mizan, al-qistas and mizan, there's balance. Balance is a very important Muslim heritage, traditional, religious, right, characteristic, which makes people behave, right? Now, I'll give you an example. Speaking about energy and all that, I was in a very posh hotel today, right? And I was in a rush to go out so that people are waiting for me downstairs. And I opened the door to go out of my room, but I thought I left the table lamp on. So I was thinking, shall I go? I said, no, I have to go and switch the light off. Now, if I wasn't thinking of one planet living and wastage of energy, just thinking of this hotel is making a hell of a lot of money out of me and out of the D1, so let them lose a bit of electrical units, doesn't matter. Well, that's not this. This is not a behavior which will be in resonance with a responsible behavior for the future. See, this is how, the difference. لا تقبض يدك, right? And ولا تبسطها كل البسط. The concept of balance and preservation and so on is extremely important. So, let's move very fast on this. Everybody thinks today, all our educational systems, all our training systems, our leadership in management of oil companies, of businesses and so on, they think that things are improving. Nicely, today is better than yesterday, and tomorrow will be better than today, and so on. They think this is really what's happening in the world. And they plan accordingly. Growth, economic growth, right? Everybody wants to consume more. And so, things are endless, and we carry on like that. But it's not really, that is not what's happening. What happens is that you get a difference, you get change in the operating environment will force you and will force the situation to go down. So we don't want to go into details, right? Because this is really a very deep subject. But let's look at the challenges that we have in a nutshell. If you look at increasing unsustainability of our current multi-planet way of life, with the way we live, is as if we have got something like 10 planets in our hand, right? This is the way can you imagine if every African and every Indian and every Chinese have got cars and they have luxury flats and so on? It's just not going to work, right? So something is going to happen. Now then, what happened? This is really what we call Horizon 1. This is what, carry on as usual, but it is not sustainable. It's going to go down, as we have seen. The environment and the dynamics of the situation is going to force you to come down. So that in the future, it's going to come down. And you need to make a change. And what we need to do is, there is a bit of attempts to do some research and innovation to try to keep things going. A lot of our research in universities and in companies and so on is effectively to be competitive but keep things going. Right? And more of what we are doing. Improve a little bit on it, but there's no global out of the box, right? No global out of the box thinking, right? So most of our research is just really keep things going as they were. But there are some people who are trying to sort of do something, which is to be innovative, right? And try to look at how do we get out of these problems? And then what you end up with is that you got visions of a single planet. There are a lot of people like me and many others, they feel that the world need to think, whether they are individuals or companies, universities, governments, they have to think of this. And who else besides the Muslim Ummah or the Muslim people who should care more about humanity and the planet? Those people who have been described by the word Tajir, Ta, Alif, Jim, Ra, Taqwa, Amana, Jara, and Rahma, right? So what you will then end up with, hopefully, in the future, you will end up with what we would call, responsible. You adopt an imperative. Don't worry about all these details. They're not really meant to be, these are different subjects that one needs to talk about. And then you have in the future, we have a single planet living paradigm becomes a norm, right? And there is a big conflict between Horizon 1, the red, and Horizon 2, so that you get Horizon 3. There's a lot of effort to keep going on Horizon 1. That is, keep what we are having today and carry on. Everything is fine, not to worry, right? And that is not sustainable. So our education needs to bear that in mind. Our policies need to keep that in mind. Our mosques needs to keep that in mind, right? All people everywhere, whether they are Muslim, Christian, Jews, Buddhist, Hindu, without a religion, they need to realize this, that the world we have inherited, we need to look after it so that we can pass it on, just like we have received, right? I remember now an example of an old man was planting an olive tree. So a guy came to him, he says, "You're an old man, why are you planting an olive tree? This olive tree, it takes years before it brings olives. It may take 20, 30 years. He says, you're not going to be seeing the fruit." He says, "My young man, they have planted, we have eaten. We plant so that they eat," meaning you plant for your future generation. And that comes to me as now another saying of the Prophet ﷺ, peace be upon him, is that should any of you have a small plant, a sapling, fasila, in his hand or her hand, and the day of judgment suddenly come in front of you, plant it. Plant it. Now this is fantastic, isn't it? Because it looks like the religion and faith has a very positive impact on the world, not just by spiritual, but actually, useful. Planting a tree is a very useful thing for humanity, not only for the global thing, but also its fruits, its food, and so on, and improving the. These concepts need to be. They were already available at the time of the early Islam. People did not think about them. They were doing them, right, to follow their own tradition and practice of their own faith. But they so happen to be, they actually positively impact towards the world. Now, if you look at any big project, there will be around 12 factors, very important 12 factors that govern it. Take, say, the world model today. You can use this. There is the cultural values, the health and well-being of people, food and agriculture, business and trade, energy and earth resources, climate change, ecosystems, water availability, habitat infrastructure, economy and wealth, governance institutions, and community and resilience of the community. These factors in the world, or in your society today, or in any project you have, they all come together. And each one of them is interconnected with the others. Each one of them is connected with the rest of the 11. So we have 66 connections. And any change in one will affect the rest. And any change in the rest will change the rest. So it's a huge number in a very complex system of interaction of these. And many big projects and even wars or big countries collapse because they don't realize that some of these factors, when they work together, they can produce unexpected results. They call them unexpected consequences. You may solve problems individually and you think, well, that's fine. Doing money, financial system is fine. But you don't realize that if you're sorting out big problems in energy or something else, and it will combine with the ecosystem, you're in big trouble. And it may even have a shock, like an earthquake or something, which will cause all sorts of problems in the rest. This idea of having an attitude which keeps in mind a global one planet thinking and apply it to projects and apply it particularly on education in subjects, all subjects, maths, physics, chemistry, biology, medicine, fiqh, all comes into that. Right? Most of the fiqh, because of the masalih, fiqh al-masalih, actually gets involved in this without us realizing. Right? So, what it is that but the important thing for future life on this planet and for the future for our children is that all these factors, they need to be dynamically balanced with each other, right? So that they can face shocks, in case there is a war, so that it does not really cause an exponential growth or an exponential collapse. Right, well, how do we solve these problems? What do we do? Where does education come in, right? That is a big question. Now, any problem, when it comes to societies or humanity, needs to have an understanding. People need to understand each other and cooperate with each other. We've got to be able to work together to solve such problems. But how can we work together? Because the world is full of political and religious conflicts. And there is also the greed and so on. All this comes in under political, because politics is about domination. Right? And religion is about firm belief in a system of ideas and your concept of God, and that differ with each other, and people are not very easily moving. They don't shift much. How are you going to solve this? If we are to solve future problems, and if we are to train our youngsters to go and live in this complex world, how are we going to go about it? So this is really a very interesting question. But let's see how things work. You see, as human beings, the way we look at the world, look at each other, and look at the environment, we look at it through our own single personalities. I have my own personality, which is different than yours. Right? Each one of us have their own, we call identity. And that goes around all the world. And it is through this mental model that we talk to each other, and you see me through your mental model, and I see you through my mental model. I see you as through my identity, and you see me through your identity. But what is identity? People all say that your identity is actually vested in the past, because it's the way, your family you were born in, and the way you were raised, and the things that have gone into your mind, your education, the media, the interaction with society, and that's what you are, in addition to some of your own thinking. But majority of what you are is what you have been told, right? We have been taught. That's education. And people think that since it is in the past, and the past cannot change, therefore identities cannot change. Well, that's not right. Our foundation have done a lot of research into this, right? You will wonder, where is Muslim heritage in a minute? I'm coming to this in a minute. You see, identity is based on history, on the past. And if you discover that the history that you have been taught is not quite the real history that you should have been taught, that there are others who are related to you, who have things common with you, and some of them even maybe you think of them as your enemies, you find that they are actually related in one way or another, then you begin to change your understanding. So we call this reperception. Now let me show you how this works. We have a model which is called Be the Future. This is a new framework of thinking. It's a very advanced tool that came through cybernetics and high power management. If you have a mental model there on number 2. If you have a new situation, you reperceive, right? Like suddenly you discover that 1,000 years of amnesia, in the Western mind and in the Muslim mind, which we call the Dark Ages, actually were not dark. They were quite, bright, but they were not European. Those who lived at the time of the Golden Ages in the Muslim world corresponds at the time of the Dark Ages in Europe. So as a European, suddenly when you discover that, you begin to reperceive. This reperception affects the mental model. And when the mental model is slightly affected, it changes attitude. People can change their attitude, and they are responsible for their attitude. Attitude doesn't come in by external influence. Nobody can force you to develop your attitude. Attitude is something that Allah has given you, and nobody on earth can change your attitude. Your attitude could be one of angry, you could be supportive, you could be happy, you could be any form, but it is you who is responsible for that, and you are the one who chooses. As soon as you choose, you change your attitude, and you select it, then you begin to organize, right? Remarkable people throughout history, they have been like this. They were able to reperceive, they were able to change their mental model, they were able to change their attitude, and then they were able to organize, communicate, and then organize. You think about it, and you can start even from the early Muslims. Every Muslim at the time of Muhammad ﷺ has gone through this. Because suddenly, from Jahiliyyah to Islam, right? From Dhalam to Nur, from darkness to light. This change, it makes them reperceive the purpose of life, reperceive their role in this planet, right? And that reperception changes their mental model. And when they change their mental model, they then develop an attitude. This attitude could be, positive, could be negative, and so on. And then what do? They communicate it to each other. As soon as you communicate, then you start setting up organizations. And that's what happened at the time of Muhammad ﷺ. It happens in every movement in history, whether it is Islam or Christianity, communism, you name it. This is the way it works. This is the way it works. So, now where does all this fit in my case and our foundation and our project, and how it will impact on the idea of enriching education and the syllabus in our schools and our universities. The guy you see there, his name is Professor Donald Cardwell. He was at the time, I think, when Dr. Hilal, you were there in UMIST at that time. Yeah, he was the professor of history of science and technology, and he was the one who founded the Museums for Science and Industry in Manchester. Now he looked at me one day and he said, "Salim, what are you going to do with your life?" I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Well, you've done very well with yourself, published, you are the highest earner in the university. I was working in the oil companies as a consultant, and I had 2 companies at the time, and we worked on the North Sea oil and so on. We've done very well. And considering, by the way, that alhamdulillah, I was born an orphan in the small alleys of Baghdad, right? See how, So, he said, "What are you going to do with yourself?" I said, what do you mean I'm carrying on? No. He said, look, I have spent my life studying history of science, and there is a gap about 1,000 years we call the Dark Ages. But this corresponds to your civilization, you know. I said, what do you want me to do? He says, it's history. I said, look, Donald, I hate history. He says, why? I said, because the history that I was taught was history of people killing each other. I remember when I was taught in Baghdad history in 2 years, I ran away from it and I went into the, they call it al-ilmi, you know, the natural science branch, left human sciences, right? Social sciences. I went to do engineering and science, you know, so. And he said, look here, what you have been taught is political history, which is full of wars, and also religious history, which is also full of wars, right? What I'd like you to look at, because you as a scientist, have a look at history of science and see how people in the past behaved with each other. And look at the scholars of science and of knowledge and so on. Oh, this was very interesting. I thought I'd give it a go, have a look at the side, and I was surprised. I really was surprised. He was quite right that there is 1,000 years missing. There's an amnesia of 1,000 years, all right? And I'll just tell you how it worked. There's a very popular book which is called, you know, Scientists and Inventors in the World. You know, this is the history of scientists and inventors in the whole world. And this was a popular book at the time. And each 2 pages speak of one person. You know, you open the book, 2 pages, like in the year before, you know, BC, 212 to 287 C, right? They mention Archimedes, right? Archimedes, and speak about Archimedes. The next page, the next 2 pages, because this is page 14, you see, I don't know whether you can see it. Next page is 16, right? And it speaks about Johannes Gutenberg, a huge jump to year 1400. And then Leonardo da Vinci, 1452. So, what happened to humanity in all that time? No brains, no creativity, no, you know, there's no inventions at all in China, India, Muslims, and, you know, Africans. You know. Human beings are normally creative by nature. They solve problems. We have solved so many problems today. You know, we just solved a problem here with my laptop. This is an invention. By solving a problem, you actually create it. So we are inventive creatures. And then you ignore all these inventions. So it really is a big problem. To summarize what I have found, in the syllabus of schools, I went there, asked some of my students, have a look. And what we found is that the way we are educated in our schools is this. If you take the names of scientists and the inventions and spread them on a timeline, right? That means you take the date of, you know, the name of the person with the science and put the date of either when he was born. In fact, hardly any women, I'm sorry to say, in that map. Then he was born and where. You put this across, you find 2 things. One is that what is mentioned in the syllabus, they're all Europeans. You do not find any name that is non-European, including Americans, right, modern. The other one is that there is a gap about 1,000 years missing. It seemed to, sort of, if you go backward from modern day, all the way back, then you reach the Renaissance, and then nothing happens. It's called the Dark Ages, or the Medieval Ages, or the Middle Ages, middle between 2, right? And then the Romans and the Greeks. You got names in the Greeks, you know, like Archimedes, like Galen, like Pythagoras. You see, these are, but they're all European. And then suddenly, nothing. Now, these 2 characteristics are very serious and they're very dangerous, I'll come to that in a minute. So what we did, just say, okay, let's go and ask the experts. We've made a website called muslimheritage.com, and this has acted like a honey trap. So many people were interested and excited, and they started writing and so on, and we started asking some people about the real information. Come up with a staggering number of scientists, Muslims and non-Muslims, males and females, right, who are missing from that graph. They're missing, and each one of them deserves to be either a fellow of the Royal Society or maybe given a Nobel Prize. Let's take some of them. You can't read it. This is just only qualitative. Take this, which you can read. I've deliberately put in red two ladies. All right? These people, if they were alive today, they would have been given Nobel Prize. It's just 40. We can have a lot more than those. They're missing. Their names do not appear in the science and university and school books. So what education really needs to do is to enrich its subjects. We are saying that what you're being taught, you are actually taught the wrong thing, and we don't want to be speaking of extremism and so on. No. Let us say we want to enrich the syllabus. What we'd like you to do is when you come to teach, say, physics or maths, and you come to the name of Newton, right? Then we'd like you to say, well, by the way, when Newton said that if I have seen further than others, it was because I was standing on the shoulders of giants. Now, ask your students, who are these giants that Newton was talking about? Huh? Because if you put that timeline, all right, if you go back to that slide and you put that timeline, he'll be at the Renaissance time, right? He'll be standing on air. There's nobody underneath him. So who are these giants that he was talking about? Now recently we have had a very interesting exhibition in the Royal Society. They took the archives from those days in their libraries, and then they made an exhibition about them. And it showed a great number of those great Royal Society fellows who founded the Royal Society in London. They are the great scientists of the world at the time. Many of them knew Arabic. They were reading Arabic and commentaries on the manuscripts in Latin, right? And some of them were actually very proud of speaking Arabic, like Halley, the Halley Comet, yeah? Professor Halley spoke Arabic. He wrote even papers in Arabic about Al-Battani and so on. So we find, therefore, that when you come to speak about Newton, and you want to enrich the syllabus, then you say, okay, you ask the students to go around and look at who are those great giants that Newton was talking about, and so on. Then you discover that, in fact, these came from the Muslim heritage. When Europe has started the Renaissance movement, it did not start from nothing. Science and knowledge transfers from one nation to the other and so on. This is they call Dawrat al-Hadara, right? This is the movement of civilization. So this is history that is acceptable. It gives you respect. You respect other cultures. You respect the contributions of people who have been in the past, right? I'll give you an example why it is, how we can recognize. You may have a very big building, a very spectacular building, like modern civilization today. You own it, like America does, right? Science and technology, NASA, and so on. This house that you own today, through your own work and your money, was built by architects, built by builders, the plumbers, decorators, and so on. And unfortunately, the way we behave today in our schools, we neglect all those people who contributed to the building of the house that you own. You just think, because my house, that's it. You forget about the rest. Now that is not fair, because everybody should be recognized, whoever has contributed to the building of modern civilization. So our educational system needs to be, to recognize the movements of knowledge and science and how it moved around from one place to another, from Arabia to Baghdad, from India, China, Europe, and so on. Civilization actually moves. Now, why is there a problem with this 1,000 years amnesia? Suppose we don't do anything. Let's suppose we use Horizon 1. Everybody is fine. Let's carry on with this present educational system that we import from our past, which is from America and Europe. This present educational system, which has bred the 1,000 years amnesia, what is it producing? For young lads and lasses who have been brought up in the West, in this educational system, they come out with a feeling of superiority complex, because they don't see any contribution from other nations. Nobody else has contributed to the science that they see and they read about, except Europeans. Not only this is a problem because of the superiority behavior, but it also creates, in the opposite side, in the Muslim world and China and India, all those people who are not being recognized, it creates inferiority complex. Right? So young people in the Muslim world, they feel inferior. And young people like to express themselves, and sometimes they have to be violent. Even my own kids, in order to show that they have, when they are teenagers and they want to prove their personality and they want to prove something, they start causing problems so that, they carve a space within the family. They tend to revolt to prove themselves. And so are nations as well. If you don't recognize, and there are historians who says nowadays, what governs behavior of nations in the long run and behavior of people is not like what Karl Marx have said, it was economics and money and materials. Not like the capitalist theory says that it is to do with consumerism and with money and so on. What is the most important that has governed history's movement is the dignity of man and woman, we mean, right? Dignity, respect. And in fact, there has been a recent Gallup in the United States, an international Gallup, about 10 years ago. They went around the Muslim world and they picked up thousands of young people. Right? I spoke to the lady who has actually been in charge of that project, and they produced statistics. One of the questions says to young Muslims, what do you want from America? Right. 60% of them says, we want respect. We want respect. Can you imagine? They didn't say we want money, they didn't say, we want to have recognition. Now this is really where it becomes very interesting. So this dynamics of superiority complex in one hand and inferiority complex in the other causes a huge imbalance. Superiority complex feeling without being guided by moral ethics, it is very dangerous. It could produce killing 20 million red American Indians. Wipe them out in the name of civilization, in the name of high culture, because they're savages. When I was a young boy, I used to like watching cowboys and red Indian films. And you know what? We always clap for the cowboy when he kills so many Indians, because they are savages. The poor people, they are defending their own, land from the invader, right? But he's cutting them down, and we are clapping, and we're very happy. He is a drunkard, a womanizer, and so on, wearing this long hat, right? Slinging guns right, left, and center, and we enjoy that. And the poor red Indian, the guy, just because he looks different, he's considered a savage terrorist, and they are enjoying killing them. 20 million Red Indians have gone. You cannot have superiority of culture without morality. Nazism was a superior, Deutschland über alles, right? Almania فوق الجميع. This was the slogan. Super nationalistic feeling. Without binding morality and so on. Look at what happened. Right? In the Second World War, 2 huge atomic bombs were dropped on very big cities in the world, Hiroshima and Nagasaki. There was no need. The decision is incredible. You can't, wiping out so many human beings. You need moral code and moral ethics to control power and to control superiority. Similarly, the inferior people, right, young inferior people, can cause huge problems in the world if they are being treated as inferior, as indignified, as nobody, right? They cannot accept that. And they will express themselves in various ways. When we had the 1001 Inventions exhibition first time in Manchester, I was told, I wasn't there on that day, I was told, because it's very inspiring and it's very exciting, and it shows actually the golden age of Muslim civilization, right? Young lad from Bangladesh, he was brought by some of his friends because he had a problem. He had a psychological problem. He was about to commit suicide, right? Because his family was very backward. He didn't like his family, their house, and so on. He goes to school, he's treated as an inferior guy, no good for nothing. And he was about to commit suicide. So they brought him to this exhibition, showed him the 1000 Inventions book, sat down, and apparently what he did, he took a chair, and he stood on the chair in front of people, held the book, and he says, I feel I am a human being now. The guy became suddenly a normal human being. So that means, and then later we know that he's, want to become top scientist in the world, and he wants to get Nobel Prize and so on. Can you imagine the transformation? The perception, the re-perception of history, of yourself, and of your role, of your grandfathers, and see how they have, contributed to the world, is something that can revolutionize the whole of the rest of the world that we think are inferior. But you need to have, the superior has to be controlled by moral ethics and so on, but also the inferior and their revolt has to be also controlled with ethics and controlled with role models, so that people, when they respond, they will be useful to society rather than be a disruptive and corrupt the society and hurt the future. So, let's now move on. I therefore need to stress that many of our science subjects need to be enriched, and they have to include not only the names of Westerners there, you have to bring in those men and women from the history of the rest of the world, so that the science can be continuous and taught properly. Now, in my case, when Donald Cardwell told me at the time, I said, okay, I'm going to have a look at history of engineering, because I'm an engineer, I'm professor of mechanical engineering, right? Then I went and then found some manuscripts by some guys. One of them is called Al-Jazari. I was amazed. The guy, he has discovered and used some fantastic machines, and we don't know anything about them. In fact, some of the machines he has designed and made, without them, there would have been no industrial revolution in Europe. Now, one of them is the conversion of the circular motion into linear motion and so on. But the most revealing one is this elephant clock, which is in his manuscript. And it is so fascinating that this is actually a clock, by the way, right? It is an elephant with various, and this clock is And we produce animations from these manuscripts, really draw what they were supposed to look like, and using engineering principles and so on. An elephant, recognizing India, right? There was no elephant in where he was living. He was in South Turkey, in North Syria, Al-Jazari, in the year 1200. But he used an elephant to recognize Indian contribution. You see, the behavior of a Muslim recognizes the others. You don't plagiarize, you don't neglect, you respect the contribution of other people. He has produced, in this clock, Chinese dragons to respect China. You recognize Chinese science and that Muslims have received from the Chinese. Also, we have the Arabic the robots. They are Muslim Arabs with turbans, and then the phoenix on the top, that bird that swings around, is the symbol of Egyptian pharaonic Egypt. Okay. Now, so this is really great. I'm going to move on. This elementary discovery of turning the rotary motion into a linear motion is really extremely important in engineering. And when I discovered that, I thought this was really fascinating. And he's the one who the first suction pump in history. And as you see, this motion of the Mudakhal Masal Kabisa, using water to drive it in the river, and then so that you raise water there. These are manuscripts on the left-hand side, and then how we reproduce them on the right-hand side. Now, this was really very exciting for me, because being a professor of mechanical engineering, I was able to look at it and see what was missing, and hence can be used in teaching. It can be used when I teach engineering. I can speak about these things, and people then will, students will recognize them, they can analyze them, and so on. Now, I had one of the students who have helped me drawing this, by the way. On the right, this is on the left, is a makhtuta of Taqiyuddin al-Rasid, originally from Syria, but he was based in Istanbul in the year 1550. Now, 6 cylinders, those of you who know how the cars work, very similar, isn't it? But the one who did this for his final year project is one from Oman, from Muscat. And his name, I think, was Muhammad al-Lawati. I don't know how to contact him. I wish but he did this. This is his drawing, by the way, on the right-hand side. I couldn't find when I've lost contact with him. All right? So, it's so easy to do these things in your educational curriculum. And this is just for engineering. You could do that in every subject. You go to manuscripts, you edit them, and find out what they say, and use and discover what contribution they have made. All right? And then, Taqiyuddin al-Rasid has also, it's a mechanical clock. This escapement mechanism system, this tick-tock, tick-tock, without that, you will not be able to tell time in the mechanical clocks. So it really is, I was absolutely fascinated. Yeah. This thing here is an alarm clock, works on water. I've made it. Can you hear it? No? Yeah. I made it quick so that but you can actually time it in this way. This was done by Banu Musa. The other one here is a very interesting machine, which is a wudu making machine. Wudu. Yeah. This is a robot, a very nice robot. People like to respect water. You don't go there and say to the guest, go to the, and you give him ample water and he flushes everything out. No, this water has to be protected, looked after. Very important, Throughout Muslim tradition, this has been very, very important. And this robot here, you bring it to the guest who wants to make wudu. Then you tip the head of the bird, and then it starts working. It gives you the exact number of water spouts from the mouth, from the beak, that you need. Right? When you're washing hands, washing face, washing arms, and so on, feet. And then when it finishes, it clicks and it turns, it gives you a towel. That's really interesting, isn't it? But the automatic control inside the machine is really very interesting, very interesting. And there are many other machines. I think that we need to go. This is a repetitive flush system, which uses siphon and valves that we use in our modern day. I'm really just doing this for in engineering, but you can do the same in every scientific and technological subject. The contributions of past civilizations is enormous, unbelievable. You know, this was what was behind the mechanism that controlled that fountain that changes shape. A fountain changes shape, right? But there's no electricity, there was no, how does it change shape? And this is the mechanism. And I discovered this mechanism here. There is a worm and wheel in engineering. This screw, this is worm and wheel. Worm and wheel in the year 889 from Bani Musa, at the time of... This is incredible, right? Now, this one here is an animal feeding machine. Animals need water. Water is scarce, right? So what do? The guys invented a machine so that when the animal comes, steps on a platform, it opens the lid automatically, right? And then as the animal takes water, the water level comes down. But then the animal might try to catch the water and sink into the water. So the important design factor now is to keep the water level the same. So this machine not only opens the lid and allows the water to be drank, but also keep the water level the same, no matter how much water you take out of it. Guy is busy doing his work. Animals happily come and water themselves. You preserve water because it's closed, it doesn't evaporate, and so on. Very interesting concepts. This is one planet living concepts. Right. This is what I was talking about in the early part of my lecture. And these are not done by forcing people to do it through government, through laws, do and don't do. No, it's from within. It's expressing their belief system in what we would call amal al-salih, right? We'll come to that in a minute. Now, the last thing that I'd like to touch upon is universities. The idea was talking about universities, education. Oh, okay. Just how many of you actually know what first university, where was it established and who built it? Right? Well, I tell you what, it was built by a lady, the first university in the world by a lady. Does any of our sisters here know the name of that lady? And how old was she? And where was she from? No. Really, it's incredible. Fatima al-Fihri, right? From Morocco, from the city of Fez. She and her sister inherited a lot of money في مدينة Fez, in the city of Fez. Her sister, usual H1 lady, Horizon 1, do the same, right? We just do more of the same today. She built a mosque, Jami'. Now what does Fatima do? She built Jami'ah, feminine of Jami', right? And it has a meaning, universal education, right? Old, young, black, white, brown people, male and female, and teach as many subjects as there is a possibility. Not only fiqh and reading Quran and recitation. That's a university education for you, right? And it's still functioning as a university, by the way. The oldest university in the world. Now, can you tell me, if you got now a problem of liberation in our societies, many of our women, unfortunately, feel they are under constraint. And they see the Western, I'm not going to be talking about the politics, but our foundation is non-political and non-religious. But it is important to tell you that when one goes into history and try to find out why is it that these people did what they did, how come these people did what they did? Like, for instance, Fatima al-Fihri, what made her get out of this thing and does a Horizon 3 project, out of the box? Why? Now, when you go into her seerah and find out who she was and what she did, it's amazing. This young lady was 23 years of age in the year 850, more than 1,000 years ago. 850 miladi, CE, right? She doesn't just give money like many Muslim ladies and philanthropists. They just give money and, sadaqah fi sabilillah, sadaqah jariyah and so on, and they sit in their home, right? No, not Fatima. What she did, she became the project manager of the project. And she said, as a design criterion, not a single drop of water or material to be used out of the land itself. So everything that was built for this university was from the land. They dig for water, the wood is from that land, the stones were made from that land. It's incredible. More than that, the first day of inauguration of the project with the, what do you call it, the shovel, musha, is it? Or shovel, right? Put the shovel in. She starts fasting. Every day of the project, she fasted. Some people say it took 13 years. Don't know. History sometimes, some people dispute, some people, but this is written. Can you imagine, what kind of, purpose? What is the incentive to do things like that? And this is why we were interested in the incentives. Now, with the universities, by the way, you know what a chair is in the university? I have a chair in mechanical engineering, chair, right? Why do they use a chair? Chair is the chair of the sheikh in that university and in other universities and mosques. Until now, you go to mosques, and when, I think in Ramadan in Morocco, even the king and his family, they have the Durus al-Hasaniyah. I was invited there, right? And the king and his family and all his governments and all these people, they sit on the floor, and the lecturer, they will not be I will not be standing there. I'll be sitting on that mimbar, on that big chair. So that's the chair. And this has been the tradition of great professors, they call them sheikhs or sheikha, right? To teach the students. So the concept of chair comes in from the kursi, which is an Arabic word. There are other things that we still use today from the university education, like all of us know about baccalaureates, don't we? Well, where does baccalaureate come from? That's the word, word is very strange. What do you mean baccalaureate? It was brought into Latin. It originates from bihaq al-riwaya. And those sheikhs, this Ustad Kursi, when is satisfied that you had sufficient education and you can narrate on his behalf, he gives you a certificate which is called bihaq al-riwaya. You have the right to narrate. Okay? So that's bihaq al-riwaya. But they don't stop on this. They don't stop on that. What they do is they expect you to behave yourself. If you are my student, Dr. Hilal, no, you are not my student, but the others, right? If Muhammad Lawati was here or Riyami, I had many from Oman, good students, mashallah. I'm very impressed with the Omanis, by the way, and they normally are very well behaved when they come to study. Anyway, so when you give a student your, I'm giving the name of Al-Hasani, right, to you. They say, this fellow is a student of Al-Hasani. If you're going to commit, problems and cause you become a thief or you cheat or, bad practice, this is going to be bad on me. I expect you to also behave morally. And this moral behavior had to be promised as part of the degree. Nowadays, only doctors give this oath. They call it the Hippocratic oath. The oath, doctors give an oath so that they behave morally, right, and ethically. Now, to swear on the Quran that you will behave well and that you are given the gown of the scholar, of the sheikh, this gown, right, what you wear on your graduation ceremony, this abaya, right, the gown. Now, the story I'm going to tell you is disputable, but it's entertaining, and some people say it was correct. So many of the graduates have to receive bihaq al-riwaya in one day. There will be no time for each of them to put their hand on the Quran and give the oath. So in order to sort them all out in one big graduation ceremony, they put the Quran on their head, and you have the mortarboard. And they all swear to, give their oath in this way. So there are a lot of things that would be very exciting and interesting. I'd like to end, because of engineering, and I'd like to end something to do with Oman. All right? Now, what has Oman and Formula One, most top car in the world, racing car, to do with each other? Right. Cars, as they move fast, they can launch like an airplane. That's a problem. So they have to keep the car on the road. And the way they do this is they use what they call aerofoil section, which is the same as the wing of aircrafts. The wing of the aircraft is such that when the wind passes on, the low speed underneath the flat section creates high pressure, whilst the top, because it's moving faster, it has less pressure, and therefore there is a lift. And the pilot can adjust the angles and so on, play with it. So if you reverse this section upside down in the car, that sticks. That's very simple. That's Formula One for you. But where does the aerofoil section come from? Right? Now then, I think you have seen the previous. It comes from the lateen sail. Now you guys, you have almost ruled the world, your ancestors, in using the seas and using those fantastic ships and sailing. And the famous Ibn Majid, yeah? You know Ibn Majid? The one who has guided Vasco da Gama from the Cape all the way to India against the wind. Against the wind. How does one travel against the wind? You need wind, to push your sail forward. Now, how can you travel with the sails against the wind? That's the trick of this triangular sail, and the and the dynamics and the movement of how you can actually, because you play around with the sail, and the aerofoil idea comes from there. Because when the triangular sail actually curves, then there is a differential in the pressure. It makes it move in a certain direction at an angle, and then you manipulate the you know, the boat, and you travel the other angle and so on, so you can actually travel that way. And this is how Ibn Majid and his other colleagues used to overcome the difficulty of the wind, you know, because they are seasonal winds, and they were able to maneuver themselves there. So there we are. You know, you got Formula One, you know, best of the past to design the future. I think that I'm going to end up here. There's the 1001 Inventions Now book. We're going to be talking tomorrow a lot more about 1001 Inventions and the exhibition and how it has impacted on the rest of the world and what's happening. There is also, out of this book, National Geographic has produced a young reader's book. It's not 1000 Inventions book, which is for the general public and for the mature people, but this one is for kids. It's called 1001 Inventions and Awesome Facts from Muslim Civilization. I hope that we've made an interesting conversation. I thank you for coming and for listening. I find that quite a number of you were interested and didn't fall to sleep. So I think I have probably been successful tonight. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you very much, Professor Salim, for this very exciting talk. I'm sure it raised awareness of where we actually came from rather than where we have been taught we came from. It's now up to us how do we carry forward it in our building the education system. Professor Salim will also give us talks in the coming few days at the Grand Mosque. The next one will be on Wednesday, and he's talking of 1001 inventions, discover Muslim heritage in our world. This is going to be in the auditorium of the Grand Mosque at 8:30 also. The next one will be on Thursday, Women of Science in Muslim Heritage, Role Models. On Thursday, same venue at the Grand Mosque. And the last one will be on Friday, inshallah, Muslim Heritage and Development, Lessons from the Past to Design a Better Future. So you're all welcomed to all these lectures. Now we have a few moments for question and answers for Professor Salim. Those who would like to raise any questions. We have a microphone here, over there, sir.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Muhammad Nafi. It was a very insightful presentation from you.
Can you please, we can't hear it properly.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. The presentation was very insightful. Thanks for the presentation. And you are talking about the contributions of Muslims to the human civilization, especially the development of human science. But my contention is that after 12th century, there was all the innovations, all the contributions of Muslim Islam to the human civilization came to a grinding halt. When you examine the history of human civilization, you can find out that any society that fails to build on its grand legacy in the past is a failed society. Why Muslims fail to build on their legacy, their vibrant and dynamic legacy of science? I want to know your comment on this.
What we are saying, why did it stagnate at that point? So
okay.
That's your question.
My contention is that instead of glorifying the past, we need to we need to find out a way to build down our legacy.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah. Short question, but it requires a long answer, but I'll try to be very brief. Many young people like you, when, you know, it's a very obvious question, say, what went wrong? All right? Why do we come down? And I've shown you the graph of H1. It comes down. But however, why? Now, I reverse the question. Say, look here, you know, because you are in this part of the world, and you think we're down here, right? You know, the status of women and the status of technology and so on. So you think that we are actually down, although some people think, no, we're better, right? However, if you think that we're down, that means, you're like someone who fell into a ditch. You're down on the bottom of the ditch. Now, what is better to think about? Why you have fell down, and how, right? Or better to think of how do I go up? Now, I like to concentrate on the latter question. And the way we learn from the past is how people were successful in creating successful projects and societies that were exemplar. Now, if you were actually an American or you're a member of the White House or the Pentagon, then you want to know why it went down. Because it's coming down, right? And you need to know how to stop it from coming down. Right? The Western system and the capitalist system in the world, it's great, but it's coming down because of what I showed you earlier on. It cannot be sustained. You cannot be sustained. You cannot have 1% of the population in America, right, owns 90% of the wealth. You can't have that. Because the Qanun al-Kawn, Allah has created laws in this universe of there has to be justice and so on. Sooner or later it's going to collapse. You can't have that. So, but for people who want to go up, the Horizon 3, you need to think of, okay, let us make use of the experience of the past. Now, we've done a bit of studies. We've had some research into this because this is very important. It wasn't a question of history and let us be excited about what happened in the past. No, there are now, this mission now, we call it a noble mission of our foundation because it inspires young people to be useful. Right? Well, what do we mean by that? We've discovered that the early years of Muslim civilization, the secret formula, is a very simple secret formula. Everybody knows about it, but they don't actually understand it properly and they don't use it. They lost its meaning. And that is, الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات من آمن وعمل صالحا الذين آمنوا اركعوا واسجدوا وافعلوا الخير. Right? There is this output which is called عمل الصالح, right? As a result of Iman, which is the faith. Now, it was very simple. Any person became religious at the time, or got inspired by this new faith, she or he wanted to do something useful to please Allah. The concept of Amal al-Salih in those days is different from what we think today. I went to 12 translations of the Holy Quran. I wanted to look at the translation of Amal al-Salih. They all say, go look at it in your mosque and find out. It will say righteous deeds. Righteous deeds. Amal al-Taqwa. Well, that's fine. Amal al-Taqwa is, of course, Amal Salih. But Amal al-Taqwa is for you. What is meant over there, Amal al-Salih, yaslih, to be useful to others. It's the output, it's input Iman, output Amal al-Salih. That's what has done it. And if you look at the life of the Prophet, you look at the life of Sahaba, Umar radiallahu anhu, what did he say? I fear Allah will be punishing me for my responsible for a stone on the road of a camel going to Iraq or going to Yemen, right? Lest that the animal will tip over the stone. This is civil engineering for you, man. Making roads so that there'll be no stones, so you pave the way. And then you have many examples of people that just go there and try to do something in their own understanding will cultivate earth. The planting of trees became part of their output. Inventing medicines to clear the sick, right, became an useful output. Right? Industry became useful. Inventions like I've shown you there. If you look at this book that I showed you about Al-Jazari, the title of this book, it has got, Al-Amal al-Nafi' in it. Fil alat wal Al-Amal al-Nafi'. The word there, and when you look at the introduction, the guys, they are believers in Allah, but they believe that this output, which is going to be useful to people, to the world, is like something that's... Now, that bit of man amana wa amila salihan, also another, that who he or she who believe and do useful deeds, it was a concept, right? And the definition of iman, I am told, is al-imanu ma waqara fil qalb wa saddaqahu al-amal. Yeah? Now, so this bit... Sorry? Okay. I will do it in English. Right. The idea of, I'll tell you what, I'll give you an example. I'm a mechanical engineer, so I know about cars, right? And everybody knows about cars. You put petrol in the car, right? Why? This is input. You get output. What is the output of the petrol? It's the movement of the car. The car movement to take you from one place to another is useful deeds. In Arabic, it's called amal salih. It has been useful to you. The input is the petrol. Many Muslims, in the early years, of course, there are people who are specialists in the chemistry of the petrol, like fuqaha of the, faqih of religion, scholar of religion, is the equivalent of a chemist or a chemical engineer on the petrol, a petroleum engineer. They know about the input, right? And they can argue with each other about how much constitutes the chemistry and so on. But the output is amal salih, useful deeds. Unfortunately, the meaning of useful deeds has shrunk and it has become pious deeds, righteous deeds. What do you mean by righteous deeds? Pious deeds. Oh, well, you read more Quran, you read more prayers, you fast more, have more qiyam al-layl, you mention Allah 1,000 times a day, and things like that. This is all very good, but it's improving the petrol. It's all about the petrol. It's all about the iman. Well, ya akhi, please, sister and brothers, okay, I've got an iman. You would keep polishing all the time. I'm sorry, but in those early years, they didn't all become fuqaha and they didn't all become, mufassirin. It was just a simple thing. Islam is a very simple thing. You read as much as you can from the Quran. You connect with Allah 5 times a day. That's your input, your spiritual input. And then you have to go out. You are not like a monk. Islam does not have monasteries. Islam comes to men and women, are normal people, like Muhammad, peace be upon him, was a normal person. Connection, he had wahi, right? And we call the salah in Arabic, salah, the word salah is related to the word sila, which is communication. We connect with Allah, we get spiritual energy, and then this spiritual energy allows us to go and do something, wasiru fil ard, and then he'll be useful, right? And thousands of examples of this in the early years of Muslim civilization explains that these people understood that, and hence there was like a mass movement of doing good. Unfortunately, this spirit has gone. That's why many problems happen. So in order to rekindle, have a new paradigm shift, right, you need to revisit this. One last example on that one to prove my point. Al-Biruni, I have not mentioned here, is a great scholar north of India. He's written about 200 books, about 1,000 years ago. He even measured the circumference of the earth and he predicted it, and he made an expedition to measure one angle, 1 degree, so that to do comparison. Great in mechanics and a huge, polymath. At the age of 92, he was on his deathbed. Everybody knew he was dying because they put some drops, and he was on the deathbed. They told him that there is this man has come to visit you from so-and-so city. And when he came, Al-Biruni wanted to stand up to greet him. He couldn't because he was so frail and was dying. So he asked him, he said to him, young man, I have been looking for you for years. Alhamdulillah, you are here. Thank you for coming. I have got this problem and I know you have the solution. Can you please tell me the solution of this problem? Then what do you think this problem was? A dying man? Right? He asked him the solution of a mathematical problem. So obviously the people around him were wondering what on earth is going on in here. So he says to them, please, what shall I do when I face my Creator? When He has given me the opportunity to learn and I have not taken it. This is the kind of people. It was, he didn't need, PhD, masters and baccalaureates. He didn't need to, okay, it's all fine, I'm not against it. But education at the time was not based on vocation. You don't educate so you can get a salary. You don't educate so that you can say you're a doctor and therefore you are higher than others and you look down upon others. This was not the purpose of education in those days. There was something in the minds and hearts of these people. They want to be useful and they seek knowledge wherever it is. And they have been inspired by various sayings of the ancestors, of the Prophet himself, right? Al-hikmatu dhallatul mu'min. Wisdom is the lost camel of a believer. Some people say it is a weak hadith, right? Some people say, the hadith, the saying of the Prophet that seek knowledge, from the cradle to the grave. There is another hadith which says, the seeking of knowledge, talabul ilmi faridat, compulsory to every Muslim male and female. The other hadith says, seek knowledge even may it be in China, right? But some people say these hadiths are not as high in quality in terms of authenticity. Anyway, you can talk from them. This is not my subject, but I have learned, these things through pursuing the history of science, trying to find out how and why did these people did what they did, despite wars, despite conflict, and so on. And they were not only Muslims. Muslim scholars have worked closely with Jewish scholars, with Christian scholars, with Sabi'i scholars. They were not too much concerned about whether you were a Shafi'i or a Hanbali or a Sunni or a Shi'i or an Ibadi. Right? You are Ibadis mainly. Okay. Well, actually, I had the great honor and pleasure of performing Hajj in 1968 with one of the sheikhs of Ibadiyya from Libya. He died, rahmatullahi alayhi, Sheikh Ali Yahya Muammar. Now, so the idea here, and those people understood that petrol for the car, you think your petrol is the best and better than the other people's petrol. Well, that's fine. So your Ibadi, your petrol you think is great, better than the other petrol. You buy it from your own company, But you collaborate with the others, even with Christians and Jews and so on, like what happened before, male and female, to get the car moving. Manfa'at al-nas, right, and the building of society and i'mar al-ard is not only the profession or the duty of a Muslim. Everybody gets involved in that one. And that's what they did, right? They did at that time. And I think this is the secret. I'm sorry I've taken longer. This is very important so that you guys, young people, must realize that this is what counts. You find your role in this world, you connect with your Creator, right? Try to express and manifest your iman, your faith, through useful deeds. You choose which useful deeds, whether it is engineering or in medicine or industry or agriculture or in fiqh and so on. You choose. And you become the best in that one because it's connected with your faith. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Victor. Any other question? Yeah.
Thanks.
I cannot hear very well.
Can you put it closer?
Hello. Thank you, Professor Salim, for such a really very good talk. In regard your research, has it been used in a university where what you have talked about is bringing change? And is there any studies which qualitative or quantitative showing that using your thinking and putting it in the curriculum and getting results? Is there any evidence of results from what you have presented today?
That is your what you have said in the change, yeah, curriculum. Is there any example where it has been used and produced results?
Yes, we have worked with the previous government in Britain, the QCA, the Qualification and Curriculum Agency. We had a project we called the CUS project. It's called Cultural Understanding of Science Project. We worked together, we produced some good material and resources. Since then, we have set up one of our subsidiaries, because our foundation is not for profit, but we produce subsidiaries because then they can do business and earn, not only just live on donations, but they earn because they have some high-level consultants and so on, and produce resources. It's called Curriculum Enrichment for the Future, CE4TF, and they have a website, and there are resources there. We've been giving courses and training courses in Turkey. We've got one is about to happen in Malaysia. We have memorandum of understanding with a number of universities, right? There is one with Saudi University, Enrichment University. We've also got a project with MIT, the Blossoms project in MIT, which the idea you see here is that America is doing an excellent job in trying to, make science, technology, and all this knowledge available to people and help them to teach better and so on, to improve the third world. But our problem is because of the superiority and inferiority complex. So we told them that, look, no matter what you're going to do, all you're doing actually, it's good to give information, but without empowering the recipients to make them feel that they are part of the civilization and their fathers were builders of what civilization is, they will not be able to resonate with you. You've got to make them feel that, it's not coming from the top to the bottom. Recognize, enrich your curriculum, enrich science, so that people from outside America and outside Europe, they feel that they are also shareholders, they're stakeholders of this. So it's a new move. We're only young, we've only been 10 years, and thank God, this project is just everywhere now. And tomorrow, in the evening, we'll talk about the impact of this project and how and why was it called 1,000 Inventions, and how heads of states been involved in this and so on. So hope you will make it tomorrow.
No, it's not tomorrow, it's day after tomorrow. Day after tomorrow. In view of time, we'll have to limit how many questions we can take. As we have said, we will have more opportunity in the coming days. So we'll have one last question. Yeah.
Thank you, Professor Salim. It was very insightful and very inspiring lecture today. My question is in extension to the first question, that every civilization throughout history has strengths and weaknesses. And it is the weaknesses, when it overpowers the strength, that's when the civilization tends to go down. So I fully agree with you that we should be inspired by Muslim contribution to the growth of civilization in the Golden Age during those 1,000 years. However, it may be also a good idea to look at what were the weaknesses that has led to the downfall of that particular era, because from there we can also learn lessons which are equally important. to lessons that we can learn from the success of the Muslim contribution.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, you can't completely, I mean, when you build Horizon 3 for the future, you cannot get rid of Horizon 1. Horizon 1 is very important. The past is very important for building a future. What I hope I'll be able to do, and when is the Ladies Muslim Women of Science going to be? Is it Thursday? Is it on Thursday evening? Thursday evening, I'll take the development of Muslim women of science and knowledge through history and see how they have come down, right? How they were up, what kind of professions they had, what sort of levels, and why, and so on, and then see how this has happened. And the problem now is young ladies, they want to produce a new horizon to get out of this situation. But I will be saying then, on Thursday evening, a very famous sentence by Einstein. He says, you cannot solve a problem using the same tools which have created it. Right? So using Horizon 1, which is present day, systems and tools to improve a huge catastrophic situation of women today is not going to happen. Right? So many women today in Muslim world particularly, they think that the American model and the British model is the best. Now, it could be for the British, because women were treated like animals before. Right? Women's movement, and I'm now going to start my other lecture. Women's movement in Europe was started from negative, right? And then they had to fight their way up and make room amongst men to be treated, humanely and equally and all that. It's not the same in the Muslim world, because the position of women was so well and so powerful in the early years of Muslim civilization, and then it went down. So what they want today for their Horizon 3 movement is to say, look here, we just want our previous position back. Their fight is very different. It's a different method, it's a different tool. They don't have to throw away their tradition. They don't have to throw away their religion. On the contrary, if they actually go to the original, the tenets of their own civilization, religion, they will be one of the strongest liberal movements in the world. Right? And I'm going to be giving you examples of women, right, who were actually, they're very inspiring women in the early years of Muslim civilization. So this is the thing. What I'm trying to say is that we make use of the past, but frankly, to keep thinking why we are coming down, what we want is to get out of the box, use new means, make use of the past, right? Use new means to get out of the box and start Horizon 3. The world cannot afford to stay on like this. It's going to be catastrophic if we carry on like that. Use the same system, American system and so on. Look at our buildings that we are building in the Gulf and other places. It's all emitting skyscrapers and so on. This is not the way to do it, because it's all collapsing. You don't repeat this, you don't just carry on, with system which is not working, which is going to lead to catastrophe in terms of energy, in terms of, population, in terms of, So you've got to have young minds who are right inside and balanced, connected, right? But put in their mind that they have a mission in this life, one planet living. We're all human beings. We have to live with millions and millions and millions, billions and billions, in fact, trillions and trillions of other creatures. Human beings are a very, very small minority of creatures on this world. And they are the ones who are actually causing the biggest damage on this world. And Islam, when it came, it came to save the world. This is the huge mission for our young generation. And educations in universities and in schools and in training, in business, they need to bear this in mind. And then you have a paradigm shift. And I tell you, when you do this, you're not going to be the only one around. A lot of people around the world, everywhere in America and England, and Germany and so on, China and India, it's all happening. I'm not the only one who's talking like that. There's a lot of people talking about this. And you know, there's a movement now in the world to try to do things differently. And the Muslims, if they only know how to sort this out with themselves, they can become pioneers. You don't have to fight. You just go and do amal salih. Continue to do amal salih and you'll see what happens. Thank you.
Many thanks. Thank you again for your attendance, and we thank the professor for his time and for sharing with us all the knowledge. We'll see him again, inshallah, day after tomorrow, and we'll see you, I hope, inshallah, day after tomorrow. Thank you very much.
شراب الحب يعرف بالمذاق وما كل السقاة له بساق. شراب الحب يعرف بالمذاق وما كل السقاة له بساق. أحب الله عن أدب وصدق ولا أرضى سوى التقوى خلاق. شراب الحب يعرف بالمذاق وما كل السقاة له بساق. شراب الحب يعرف بالمذاق وما كل السقاة له بساق. أحب الله عن أدب وصدق ولا أرضى سوى التقوى خلاقي. إذا ما عشت لا أنسى إلهي به أسمو من الأخرى المراقي. يعز علي ترك الحب عندي ولو بلغت بي الروح التراقي. تركت جميع خلق الله دوني شغلت عن الخلائق باشتياقي. شراب الحب يعرف بالمذاق وما كل السقاة له بساق. شراب